Hey, thanks for tuning into my podcast. This is Big Head on the Block, hosted by me, Tim Henderson, aka Big Head. Hey, welcome back to Big Head on the Block. We're going to talk about retirement today, the goal, the objective, and then the aftermath of retirement. You spend about 30 years of your life, depending on what your retirement system is, as a cop. You spend about 30 years of your life going full speed, trying to make a pension for yourself and for your spouse, if you have one, trying to make sure that for the rest of your life you're set. Now, a lot of us in the police world, we retire relatively early, usually from 50 to 55 is when you retire. I retired at 52. I'm 57 now, so I've actually, this January, this month, when I release this will be my 5-year anniversary. And let me tell you, time flies. But before we get started with our guest, I want to read something, and I'm going to read it to you. I don't usually read on my podcast, but I thought this was an important message, and I wanted to make sure it was delivered on point. So here goes. There is a moment every cop knows is coming, but none of us are really ready for. It's not the first day on the job. That's the easy one. You're full of adrenaline, full of purpose, full of belief that you're stepping into something bigger than yourself. No, the moment I'm talking about is the day it all ends. The day you wake up and realize you're about to walk into the precinct for the last time. The day the badge you've worn for years, maybe decades, which is my case, becomes a memory instead of a mission. The day the radio goes silent, not because the shift is over, but because your career is over. People think retirement is the finish line, but for a lot of us, it feels more like stepping off a moving train. That's a reality. That's what it feels like. Everything you've known, the routine, the chaos, the brotherhood, the responsibility, it all stops at once. And you're left standing there wondering who you are without the uniform. This podcast is about that moment, about the day I retired and the days that followed. It's about identity transition and the strange quiet that comes after years of noise. The strange quiet that comes after years of noise. That is a reality. It's about the weight we carried, the things we saw, and the life we're trying to build after the badge comes off. If you've worn the uniform or know someone who has, or you're just wondering what happens when the job ends, you're in the right place. You're fixing to get some insight from myself and some of my guests. So I want to introduce my first guest. He is a retired captain with the Baton Rouge City Police Department, Darryl Honore. And Darryl, I want to thank you for being on Big Head on the Block.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure as long as we've been knowing each other.
Yeah, we've been knowing each other a long time. Just to give people a little backstory, we've known each other for many decades. And I'll say this, I always found Darryl to be very effective in the police world. He was a good leader, a good mentor, and he was someone who understood the dynamics of fighting crime. So if I've never told you that before, I think I have, but that's the way I feel about you, man. And I appreciate your friendship over the years.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, you said it before, and you've always been, you've been a very big brother to me. Because look, we've known each other for 4 decades now, 40 years.
Yeah, a long time. So Darryl, when you retire, everybody's situation is different. I understood that my retirement was going to come January of 2020. So prior to that, I decided, let me get my PI license. So I was able to do all that just prior to me retiring. But also, the Baton Rouge City Police started a reserve division, and I was one of the initial people involved in it. So I really wasn't worried about making money or anything like that. I wasn't worried too much about not having the resources. I figured I could make a career out of being a PI and or work extra duty as a reserve, which I did the reserve for about a year. And then I actually took another job as chief of police in Killian, all the time maintaining my status as a private investigator. I currently teach for multiple places. So in retirement, I'm not really dormant. And I'll tell you this, you have to keep your mind focused and you have to stay sharp, because you can't sit around on the couch all day and do nothing, because you'll get old quick and you'll not have a good, happy life, man. So you got to stay busy. One of the first things I tell people is, if you're fixing to retire, you have to make sure that you come out and establish a routine, because the routine is the thing that gives you some guidance. it continues the structure that you're used to. So you've had a structured life for 30 years, if that's how long you worked. For 30 years, you've been told what to do, how to do it, where to go, everything. Now you're on your own to make your own decisions, and that downtime sometime, if you don't get into a routine, it can be a little overwhelming, especially to new retirees who think that, hey man, I need to get a job right away because I've always had a job. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes. Everything you said makes a lot of sense. A year prior to retiring, I said, let me make out what I'm going to do. I knew what age I was going to be. I knew my wife was still going to be working, kids grown, grandkids are out of town. I was not going to just sit at home, be still, be dormant, and start to age quick. I knew that. I knew I had some projects around the house that, because of work schedules, most officers work 50, 60, 70, sometimes 80 hours a week just because of the nature of the job. So accustomed to going, I knew I wanted to get some of those tasks around the house completed. And what was I going to do whenever that room finally gets painted, right?
Right.
I can't keep painting the wall over and over just to stay busy. I started in my last 6 months, I started tapering back how many hours a week I was working to get myself, adjusted, acclimated to, 40, 50 hours a week.
Yeah. And for my listeners out there, when he talks about the amount of hours we work, our salaries weren't really that high compared to other salaries from other departments. So, but we always had the ability to work overtime or extra duty. So when he says we had a 40-hour work week typically, but we would work anywhere from 20, 30, 40 hours if you needed. However much money you needed, you just had to put in the work. So it's a hustle that your mind's used to, and now you don't really have that. So let me read you one thing. Before you came on, I read this to my listeners, and I want you to hear what I'm fixing to say and give me your opinion, because what you're talking about kind of exemplifies this actual statement. This is the content. The day the radio goes silent, not because the shift is over, but because your career is over. People think retirement is the finish line, but for a lot of us, it feels more like stepping off a moving train. Everything you've known, the routine, the chaos, the brotherhood, the responsibility, it all stops at once. And you're left standing there wondering who you are without the uniform. That when I came up with this content, man, I put it together as eloquently as I could, but that just kind of summed it all up, man. Stepping off a moving train because you're used to going 0 to 100 for 30 years, right? Would you agree?
Right. Oh, yes.
I think, Darryl, and you tell me your thoughts on this. I think the departments, the sheriffs, the city police, and state police, whoever, nationally, locally, I don't think they do a good job of preparing us for that moment. And I would hope that they would, maybe a couple years before people start retiring, they would bring people like me or you or previous retirees in to say, hey, this is what you can expect. These are some of the things you need to look into doing, because most people feel an overwhelming need to work when they retire because it's what they've always done. Can you give us your thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah. That's very easy. I always preach to the officers I was supervising. Look, go pick up a trade. If you started college, I know you were young then, you didn't finish, go back and finish. Go do something, because it's going to get to a point where you're going to age yourself out from doing this job. You don't want to do that and you go home broken up. You want to be able to, like you said, step off that moving train, and hopefully you're at a new destination and you're not isolated somewhere out in the middle of nowhere, that you can say, okay, now I can point the direction I want to go in. I always wanted to be an electrician, so I learned this skill along the way. Start my own business. A lot of guys do some of those things even before they retire. I can think of several that have skill sets in plumbing, uh, electrician,
Yeah, we had
AC and refrigeration.
Yeah, we've had a few friends and coworkers that have opened up businesses. Like one guy has a firearm store. People, we think because we're used to hustling, we try to think of things to do, but there's a certain small segment of them that I don't think that I think they think retirement is the rocket chair, and I just don't think I'm built like that. I don't think you're built like that. So
No,
what
no.
what advice would you give to people that are fixing to retire, say in the next 6 months to a year? What advice would you give them if they say, all I'm going to do is sit at home? Because I think you still need some structure. I tell people you need to have a routine. It doesn't have to be the same every day, but you need to stay focused on going to the gym 3 days a week, 4 days a week, or whatever, walking around the block, cycling, whatever you decide you want to do. But you have to give yourself mission and purpose, because you lose a sense of purpose when you retire, because you're used to being involved in the community. You're used to the interaction with other officers. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, people ask me, why do I want to go back to work? Have I been looking for a job aggressively? No, but looking, seeing. But now I'm at the position where I can pick and choose as to what I want. I tell them, look, I'm not going back to work for financial reasons. I'm going back to work to keep myself actively busy. The social, the mental, and the spiritual side of just interacting with other people. It gives you purpose. We've had purpose for 30 years of others depending on us.
Right.
Now, I can laugh because I talked to a few other retirees, and they said the first thing they did when they retired, I don't know if I asked you, but I went and honestly shut myself off in the house. I'd go cut the grass, run to the store if I had to, but I shut myself off in the house, and I slept. And I slept a lot for the first 30 days of retirement, after retirement. And everybody said, well, aren't you going to the gym? No, I'm tired. Well, you're not working, but I'm tired. And you don't realize how much you've sacrificed in pulling those long hours, working a full-time job, working details, and still trying to be there for your family.
Right.
I was physically and emotionally drained. The phone calls, all hours of the day and night, none of that. My wife laughs at me because immediately after retiring, I dropped weight and couldn't keep my weight up, and it's something that, any guy can say, oh, I'm gonna go fishing every day. Well, I'm a realist. Some things cost money.
Right.
Fishing every day costs money.
And look, I know
like most hobbies.
I know it's a joke, but now we're all on fixed incomes. It's something where you have to have another strategy for long term. The next 30 years, I call this phase 3 of your life. Phase 2 is the one that gets you to retirement. And phase 3 is retirement and beyond. And being on a fixed income, as silly as it sounds, you have to make sure that you don't run out of money, because I know a lot of retirees that have went through their drop account and have had to take jobs out of necessity, not just because they wanted to remain active. And you don't want to be that guy. And for those out there struggling, I wish you well, and I hope that you and y'all can get things back under control. But you have to be financially and physically responsible when you retire, because you only get a check once a month as opposed to every 2 weeks. So you have to kind of learn new techniques on how to make sure that you don't run out of money before the end of the month. And look,
I've had family and friends. I just want to cut you right there.
No, you're good.
Who tell me, you're retired. No, but I'm on a fixed income. Granted, working will not be a necessity. It's something that I want to do to stay busy. My wife is still working. My friends, my family, still working. And are there lonely days where if you just sit there and do nothing? Yes. And I try to encourage people who are considering retiring. Look, find something. Give yourself a break. It's okay. Don't find the bottle, because some do. That was advice given to me. Don't find the sofa glued to your behind.
Yeah.
as if that's the only thing you have.
Yeah. Don't let the sofa be your friend, man, because it'll make you old quick.
Very old.
So when we're talking about the dynamics, everybody's dynamics are different. My wife was a stay-at-home mom. She did everything around the house. She ran a dog business for many years, but everything was stationed out of our house. So I had the luxury of having her with me, and she's been involved in my PI firm and everything also. So I've always had that companionship that like people in your situation don't. So I know how it is for me, because if I don't have to be alone or lonely, because I mean it would get lonely if I was here by myself all the time, honestly. And we're social creatures because that's what we've been doing. We're used to interacting with the public. We like going into businesses, telling people, hey, we like when they see us and they want to engage us in conversation. And you kind of lose your identity a little bit in that capacity. You know, my identity in Baton Rouge was big head. So when I go to stores or when I'm out on the block, if you will, you know, I used to enjoy people. Hey, big head, what's up? You know, I would stop and talk, and that's something that you don't get. You can't replicate that, and you can't replicate just doing the shucking and jiving with the other officers. You know, when you're eating or just when you're in the precinct, you know, just cutting up. Those are things you can't replicate, man. And I think that that takes a little bit of toll on you, and a little bit of, I got to understand or learn how to live without that particular, you know, stuff occurring in my life as often as it did just in the normal everyday course of work.
You know, you also have to, the psychological part of it, you realize your value to people, not just outside of law enforcement, your value to people is no longer there because they can't call you for favors anymore. Those people you've helped so frequently, you know, you realize, like I said, you had a value to them then. You're of no use now. And that's a reality. People want what they can get from you. And you have a different perspective on life than, I guarantee you, 95% of even 98% of the people that you know. You know, I made a comment to some family that I was told, hey, you know, you have to think and say certain things. Not everyone is in the situation that you're in. You're retired. Everybody else is still working. And they started talking about some other things. And I said, listen, if there's one thing I've learned in 30 years of policing is life goes on. You know, we cannot just stand still in one spot. I've stood over enough dead bodies. I'm certain you have as well.
Yep.
And at some point, the reality is going to come that someone is going to stand over ours. And when I say that, that doesn't mean every dead body that we stood over was due to tragic situations. It's natural causes.
Right.
Life goes on. And people need to understand that. And that's been my approach to retirement. I got to go on and find something to do and stay actively busy. Does the police department prepare you for that? No, not like they should.
Let's put together an informal coalition, and let's make sure that we get in touch with the people that we need to get in touch with and say, hey, y'all need to do better. Not that we're blaming you, but we just need to do better, because in the world of information, we need to get this message out to people. And one thing that you said earlier, and I'm going to go back to it before I lose focus on it. The weight that we carry is heavy. We don't really understand the weight until we retire. Then we realize the dynamics of how heavy the burden was. I loved being a cop, but a lot of things we were exposed to, they're heavy, and you don't realize they're heavy when you're going through it. It's like in the military, you're carrying a 80-pound rucksack when you're marching. Yeah, it feels heavy, but really because it's something that has to be done, you do it, right? And then you get back and you take it off and you realize how heavy it was after the fact. And I've talked to a bunch of retirees, and some have been on my podcast, and a lot of them tell me that they experience moments where they become emotional, just kind of reflecting. And, to the retirees out there, I'll tell you, if you have that moment and sooner or later you're going to start reflecting and maybe you get a little emotional, that's okay. And I think it's normal. Wouldn't you think that would be normal, Darryl?
Oh yeah, but and some of like I said, get emotional. I've talked to some that have gotten angry about how their career may have ended.
Right.
And look, was all 30 years perfect for me? Hell to the no, but I made things work for me.
Right.
And no, I did not get every transfer, every shift that I wanted. But wherever I ended up, I figured out I was smart enough. I'm not going to work. I work at BRPD, but I'm not going to work for BRPD. I have to do some things for myself.
Right.
I have to find some happiness in what I'm doing. Or how many officers you and I both know over the years that have taken their own lives because they allowed the stressors of work and life, home life combined, make them do foolish things.
Yeah, it's sad, but it's true. It does happen. And the thing I'll say is what you said. I tell everybody, reflect on your own career. Don't put any emphasis on what you worried about. This chief said, that chief said, or whatever. You know what you meant to the community. The one thing that you don't really understand is how replaceable you are. I consider myself a crime fighter, and I loved fighting crime. I loved going after the shooters. I loved doing all that. But the day I retired, all that ended, and it's like sometimes you want to feel like you can help, but you're just not in a position to help, man. And the further you get away from it, the more you realize that there's no need to concern yourself with the negative things that happen in your career also, but there's no need to sit here and try to rehash a career that has already happened. Look back and reflect and enjoy the times you had. But yeah, you can't let people control you. The people that are upset about the way their career ended, you chose to let it end that way for the most part. And that's a decision you made. Sometimes people, if they get fired or whatever the case may be, they're obviously not in control of that. But that's kind of a different situation. But it makes sense what you said. But it also, I like to tell people, you have to do what you value as a cop. I enjoyed being in the community. I enjoyed helping people. I enjoyed doing all that. The external noise, the internal noise with the police department, if I had a supervisor that tried to make life hard on me, I found a way to manage and get through it. I don't sit at the precinct and let them bother me. I get out in the community where the community accepts you, enjoys you paying visits to them and stuff like that. So you have to do things like you said to manage and to make sure that you're comfortable enough to where you can not go to work mad or sad every day, because that in itself is a disastrous mindset. And I've been in it before, and I've worked my way to it and through it. So if some of these guys, they complaining about money and everything right now, I get it. We always complain about money, but I'll tell them, you still have a job to do. While you're working for BRPD or for the sheriff, whoever, you have a job to do. But in our situation, we don't have that job to do anymore. So we have to look for other things to occupy our time and our mind.
I was talking to one of my kids yesterday, and you just said something where, we can be replaced. I remember the night Vicky Wax got killed. My lieutenant got a phone call, and he said, hey, we got to go clean out. I just got a call from the chief. We have to go clean out her office. They'll have a new acting lieutenant in here tomorrow. I guess whenever they come back to work. Young officer. I'm cursing. I'm fussing. Like, hey, that's so disrespectful. But that's a reality. It told me right then and there, yeah, I can be replaced if something happens to me. The job still has to go on.
Yeah.
It didn't weaken me as a person. It made me stronger in the understanding. Someone asked me, and I think I added it up before I left. I said it's about 13 or 14 officers to my knowledge, that I can recall, that I lost, and I'm just saying me, in my 30-year career
right
at that agency. And that's a lot.
Yeah,
that's a lot for the size agency that we had. And I think about those persons, they didn't make it to retirement. And that's one of the things I tell the people who when they would call and they would give me their gripes about what happened, how their career was, and think about the people that didn't make it. The
Right.
people that you and I both know, the people that you and I both worked alongside. And we're talking about the ones that may have died tragically beyond the ones of natural causes.
Right. We lost a lot of people. And what I want to convey to people that are retiring is this: reflect on your career, but don't be angry for the rest of your life because Chief A or Chief B didn't give you what he wanted, or you felt like you were overlooked for these positions. I was about a 12, 13-year guy, and they put together what they called the CAT team. It was a crime abatement team. They picked 4 people, and I saw the chief at a call. We actually caught a burglar in progress in Tigerland, and I saw him, and it was Jeff LaDuff. I said, Chief, I want to, while you're out here, I want to tell you something. Y'all picked the team, and I wasn't selected for it. I felt like I put myself in a position to be one of the initial people, the initial 4 that they put in, and he gave me the answer that he gave me, which was he didn't make the ultimate decision, and I was okay with that. But I wanted to let him know I thought I did. But then I told that story to a female officer who was higher in rank to me, and she put it in perspective for me. She said, Tim, let me ask you a question, because I told her about another transfer I didn't get into narcotics. She said, it's God's will, and if it wasn't your time, there's probably some reason why. And I said, okay, I'm going to buy into what you're saying. And I really did. And it really kind of changed my perspective. So I quit. As a young cop, you want to move here, you want to move there, you want to do this, you want to do that. But you ain't meant to be every place. And God's will is going to put you where he needs you. He needed me in certain places, and I've been able to clearly define those moments in my mind and in my career that I was the person meant to be here for that reason. So I always thanked her for giving me that wisdom and insight whenever I was feeling a little bit left out, if you will.
Right. I had someone tell me pretty much the same thing. I had applied for chief of police. It was given to Murphy Paul, and someone said, hey, who do you think is going to have the larger footprint on the police department? You were the chief. Everybody knows you to be a street cop. Everybody respects you. You're going to leave a better, lasting impression than any chief ever could. And I said, no, man, you talking crazy. And it was like, no, think about how many officers' lives you can impact as a leader, and how if they take anything good from you, they're going to spread that out. When I made it to district commander, I get a phone call one day from the administration saying, hey, your officers are coming to work. You're not using a lot of manpower. Not very many complaints coming through about your district. What are you doing? And I went back old school and I told them, I said, I'm supporting my people. And I told them what my expectations were. And I did something that I remember my first district commander doing, and that was talking to me and telling me what he expected of me. So I went to every roll call and I talked with everybody. Personally, I decided to make it an effort to know at least one thing about the 70 officers under my command. That way, if, Tim, you're messing up, hey, Tim, how's the wife, how are the kids? Your son's at the sheriff's office, right? Look, man, have you thought about this? Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
Just making some sort of communication and connection with them. And it gave the impression that, and I did care. It gave the impression that my captain's concerned about me.
Yeah.
I need to do better. And
that means a lot to people, more than most commanders realize, because when we were young, we didn't have any interaction with our superiors. We would see our lieutenant maybe, but we definitely didn't see and or talk to our captain. And I think once, the dynamics of what you're talking about is you made a work environment where they felt respected and they felt like they mattered. And all that changes when you leave. And whenever you're in a position to make people feel good about themselves, and the work environment that you had was conducive, they were surprised probably, because you're not using manpower, because people are coming to work because they enjoy their work. People from our era, we all came to work all the time, even on the bad days. We came to work.
Right.
There was a couple of reasons why. One of them is because we didn't want to miss out on anything, because the FOMO, before that was a word, fear of missing out. That was, you didn't want to be the guy who missed whatever happened on shift. And then you had an obligation to the department, to your squad, to the community, to come there and do your job. And most of us, I know I had well over 3,000 hours. When I retired, I was able to sell them the 1920, but I had to start burning time way in advance, because I'm accumulating leave, but I'm also, I have to burn, a couple thousand hours or 1,500, whatever the case was. So that's one thing that I tell retirees, start just like you said you did, kind of cut back on the hours and kind of get used to having the next life, which is phase 3. You got anything you want to add?
Yeah, I would add, talk with your family. Talk with your family and let them know. You mentioned that fixed income. That's a reality. The ability to go out there, hey, unfortunate situation, but I talked to a few retirees at Caleb Eisworth's funeral. And some of the guys that had retired prior to me, and they told me, hey, relax, take you a couple of months off, go find something to do so you can, because we're not making that extra duty anymore. When all that comes to a reality, then you want to make sure that you can say, okay, I'm at peace. I can go do this. I can go do that. But going back, sitting at home, getting old, and someone told me last week, hey, you need to go and hang out with these older people. And I told him, I said, look, I don't want to hang out with a bunch of old people. And because I don't consider myself old.
Right.
I consider myself still young enough to go out and do things that I want to do. But just sitting around a coffee shop every day, no, that ain't me.
Yeah.
And look, let me say this. Even the working aspect of it, I did interview for a job with the state, and one of the first things the person asked me was, why are you trying to work again when you should have stayed where you were? Well, let me explain it to you like this. I promised my family 30 years of policing, and I kept my promise. No, I'm not ready to go and sit at home just yet.
Right.
Well, we don't understand why you're working. You're going to be able to work 40 hours a week? Let me get you to understand something. To me, 40 hours a week would be a part-time job.
That's right.
Compared to the number of hours I had worked during my career. For 40 hours a week sounds like a lot to you. 40 hours a week is part-time to me. I just came off of a job where 60, 70, 80 hours a week was the norm.
Right.
And when I say that, they look at me, well, I guess that makes sense. I never looked at it that way, because, yes, all law enforcement do work a lot of hours.
It's the only way. You got to hustle and grind to get what you want. The salaries aren't very high, but you can make whatever you need. If you want to go on vacation and you're
right.
going in 3 months, you can make $2,000-$3,000 pretty easy over the next few months, extra above and beyond what you need to live and to be comfortable at home. But you can make the money, or you can make it afterwards. Put it on your visa, and you can hustle and pay it off in a month or two. So that's the thing about being a cop. You pretty much can make as much money as you want. You just have to put in the time. And, that's the thing about it. So as we get to the end of the podcast, we talked earlier about maybe getting with these departments and everything. Is there something I feel like it's really needed? Even if you started with a 5-year plan and say, hey, y'all have 5 years left, you just entered the drop. Let's talk about the financial aspect of it. Let's talk about the mental component of it. Let's try to integrate some of our wisdom and knowledge the same way we mentored young officers. Let's mentor these older officers that are fixing to leave. Is that something that you think that whether it be me or you or whoever, that the departments need to focus on that?
Well, one of the biggest ones would be, the department should invite financial planners in and talk with administrations on who they would probably recommend. Thankfully, someone had reached out to me and said, hey, have you thought about your finances after you retired? They're in that line of work. I started talking to some guys that had retired. I saw them one day and they told me, hey, Darryl, get with a financial planner. You're going to be on a fixed income. Make sure your house is in order financially. When I retired, I lost $40,000 a year that I used to make annually in details.
Right. Me too.
And I sat my wife down and I told my kids as well, all the extra dad used to get, it's not happening anymore.
Right.
So those are the type of conversations that you need to have with family and with financial planners.
Well, do you think that I understand you should take care of this on your own, but I think cops, they're so focused on their job and everything. I think the departments should take a little responsibility and put a 3 or 4 hour class for these guys and bring in your planners and everything, bring in your retired cops, people that can give them some insight, because it's a huge transition. And a lot of people, they're not ready for it. They don't know they're not ready for it, because it's like when I talked to Chad King, and I'll probably talk to him about this, but he said it's like we're institutionalized, just making a joke. It's a countdown. It's like you got a 30-year sentence or plan, right? You count down. I
made that same joke.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we doing time. It's just in a different capacity. But, once you reach the end, that 30-year, your sentence is up, man, and now you're in the free world. There's a lot to do. And people that are retiring, I'll tell you this, there's a lot of money to be made in the free world if you looking to make some, and there's a lot of things you can do. Well, as we're wrapping up the podcast, I really want to thank you for coming on and give me 1 or 2 little things that you think these guys need to focus on. You said financial planning. Is there anything else that you can think of off the top of your head, just as a quick selling point?
Like I said, 2 conversations you need to have. I would encourage the first one be with your family, to let them know, hey, this is what's going to be. If you have kids that are still in school, you need to let them know, hey, dad's mom not going to be able to do this anymore. I'm going to be on this fixed income. You have to grow up. You have to start being able to accept some of these responsibilities.
Yeah.
The second one, of course, you have to have that talk with your spouse, because maybe y'all were acclimated to doing certain things every year at the same time. And the other thing is, go sit and talk with that financial planner, and then come back and talk with your family.
Get a plan of action. And I think if you start thinking about it a few years in advance, it's helpful. But definitely within the last year or 6 months, you definitely need to focus on hey, what am I going to do? Because look, it was challenging to me because I don't really have hobbies. I love being a cop. All I did was work out. I'd hang out with the family, but I don't fish, I don't hunt, I don't do any of that. So I wasn't the guy that could go fishing. I wasn't the guy that could go hunting, because that wasn't what I enjoyed. But in retirement, I found that teaching. I teach as a contract instructor with the Attorney General, and I teach opioid awareness and prevention in Livingston Parish. And I found that I get a lot of satisfaction out of both of those careers. So I do them, both of them are part-time, but I really enjoy that. So find something you want to do, make your plans, and hopefully you can have a good, prosperous retirement. To all those people at BRPD and the sheriff and everybody else we know with the state police, I hope y'all are enjoying y'all retirement. Y'all put in the work and y'all deserve it. Captain Darryl Honore, it's always a joy. You were a friend. You were someone I could lean on if I had questions. I always found you competent and capable and caring. So that the caring, the 3 C's, the caring part was just as much. And, I don't know that anybody ever has the same outlook on policing, but I found that we shared a lot of common interests in our mindset and beliefs. So for that, I appreciate your friendship. I appreciate, you being a co-worker, and congratulations on your retirement. And thanks for being on Big Head on the Block.
Thank you. I mean, look, I cared about you. I leaned on you. We had similarity characteristics. We cared about the job more than we cared about the check.
That's right.
We cared about the community. Don't get me wrong, money's great. And I'll never forget, I talked to a uniform patrol commander when I was a sergeant, and he made the dumbest comment in the world. He said, "Hey, if people don't like the fact that they're not making enough money, they can just leave." And I said, "You know what? You have to be stupid." And you're the uniform patrol commander, and I'm hearing that out your mouth. And look, I'm a sergeant telling him this.
Right.
And I said, it's not always about the money. People want to be respected at the job.
Right.
If they're respected at the job, they're going to go out there and do a good job.
Yeah. Which is consistent with what you said about 4th District. And, because I still talk to people at the department, whenever you were district commander, you did have a lot of good qualities that those people that worked under you enjoyed coming to work. And that's why they came to work. And that's why the rank couldn't really understand why you wasn't having some of the same issues. But thank you again, Darryl, and we'll talk soon, my friend.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Big Head on the Block. I'm Tim Henderson, the host. I look forward to dropping another podcast soon. Please give us any comments, likes, dislikes, or any topics y'all would like to discuss. Thank you.